Hi there, I'm Mark Topps, and this is the foundational series of video interviews with industry experts providing you with the fundamentals you'll need for running a care business. What happens now? Does somebody shout action?
And action!
Today we are going to be discussing the importance of adopting the right technology early on in a domiciliary care business to help you manage care delivery, rostering, finance, HR and auditing. Helping me discuss the topic we have Katie Thorn. Katie is the Digital Engagement Manager at the Registered Nursing Home Association and the Project Lead for Digital Social Care. Good technology shouldn't make your life difficult. In fact, it should make running your entire business much smoother. Thank you very much for joining us. Before we really kick the conversation off, I just wondered if you could just talk me through the current adoption rate of technology within the sector, especially for those small domiciliary care businesses.
Yeah, so we're seeing quite a movement in the sector in terms of technology adoption. So generally speaking, got about 2/3 of all care providers, both residential and home care, who are using sort of a mixture of IT and paper, but sort of less and less paper and more digital. So it's quite a large space. For home care in particular, we see the highest usage is rostering systems, where about 75% of home care organisations are now using digital rostering, including payroll. And also quite a lot of them obviously using messaging apps and email, particularly to talk to staff who are out in the community. We do see lower numbers of home care organisations using digital care planning compared to residential care. And also, interestingly, we have far fewer home care organisations who complete the Data Security and Protection Toolkit as compared to residential care. It's about 50% of home care organisations, it's about 75% of residential care. And that number is much higher in nursing care. It's hard to find very specific breakdowns in terms of size of organisation, how likely they are to use technology. But the general trends that we see are that very small domiciliary care companies, particularly micro organisations, are among the least likely to be using technology. It's changing a little bit with some of the new organisations coming into the sector because, and we might want to get into this later, it's sort of easier to start a new organisation already using technology than to sort of retroactively put it in. But we don't have any stats on that yet. It just sort of appears as an emerging picture.
Thank you very much. Is it possible, you spoke there about some of those micro enterprises, for us to benchmark somebody new coming into the sector, setting up a business, predominantly probably on around 100 hours a week, what kind of tech they might envisage being embedded into their service?
Yeah, so there isn't sort of an official benchmarking tool that I'm aware of. If there is one, I'd be delighted to find it. But what we would see people using is, as a minimum, you probably look at full Office suite, sort of Microsoft Office 365 or its equivalent. You'd want to be able to have Outlook, Excel, some organizations using things like Forms or Power BI or Automate, as it's all in one package. You definitely want to be looking nowadays, I think, probably at having some form of digital rostering system, even if you're just managing that on an Excel spreadsheet rather than on bits of paper now, to be probably sort of in the top 50% of organizations in terms of technology adoption, or the most forward thinking.
And I definitely think you're right there in what you spoke about earlier around actually, if you're a new organisation, actually embedding that technology into everything you do from an early stage. Obviously, there's a cost implication there, but actually just building that framework and growing on it.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of benefits of utilising technology, what would you say are some of the benefits?
So obviously it depends on which kind of technology you're using, but the ones that I think probably we see most commonly and which people talk about the most are for electronic rostering, for example. It's much more efficient and effective than trying to do paper rostering, which can take hours. Anybody who's had to sit there sort of rubbing out like a paper document knows how painful that can be as an experience. So quite often we hear people talking about the number of hours saved from doing that as a basic administrative task. I don't want people to go away and think, oh, that means we're going to reduce the number of staff. No, it just frees up those people from doing admin around rostering to be able to look at maybe supervisions, training, supporting the team in broader ways, and kind of getting to those jobs which you never have time to do, which is fantastic, I think, for a lot of people. So we see a lot of that. It's also great for staff wellbeing as well. Quite a lot of staff really feel much more comfortable when they can see their shifts on their phone. They can pick up extra shifts quite often. You can request holidays much faster. It's much more responsive in terms of feedback. And I think the staff wellbeing can be a really, really helpful thing. I'm conscious some staff will not be particularly comfortable with using technology. But broadly speaking, especially in newer organizations where people come in expecting technology to be used, we see staff are very happy. And in terms of people we support, I think a really important benefit is there's greater transparency in what we're doing as care services when you're using digital systems. You can have a digital record where, obviously, with consent, people's friends and family can have access to certain parts of what activities they've done on a day. And if you've got, you're looking after somebody or caring for somebody and their loved ones can't visit all of the time, it can be really reassuring for everybody involved that those loved ones can sort of remotely log into a portion of a care record and can see what's happened, make sure that someone's come in and checked on mum that day, or that they've helped dad go to meet up with some friends or to watch the football, whatever it might be. I think that can be really, really important for people.
Absolutely. And I think back to the last inspection I had where they wanted the plan versus actuals, they wanted the care plans, they wanted the staff files. And actually I was thinking back to kind of my role as a registered manager, when we were paper-based, actually how much time and effort it would have taken for us to have retrieved those files, either from the office or from the archive, to uploaded them, to have scanned them, to then have emailed them over securely to the CQC, and actually how easy and efficient it was to actually just have it come straight from the system into a PDF, the password protected, and then just sent over straight to the inspector.
Yeah, exactly. And so many of these systems as well will automatically collect all of that data for you. You can ask them to create whole sort of audits and assessments based on what you normally send to CQC or what you want to check as sort of a registered manager. And it will just automate that all for you at a push of a button, which saves so much time, as you said.
In terms of that collecting of data that we just spoke about, what are some of the benefits you've seen of being able to pull that kind of the data to analyse trends and bits and pieces? What are you seeing in the sector at the moment?
Yeah, so there's the data that we collect around individuals to do with their care, which rather than having to sort of look at care plans in a paper format over time and maybe setting aside a full day or a couple of hours in the afternoon or, in the middle of the night, whenever you can get it, to sort of go and do those reviews, having it digitized can quite often flag changes, automatically notifying you that there's something you might want to see. So a computer system, for example, would be able to flag to you if somebody's weight has been going down over time, which is something you might not notice if you're there every single day, because you don't spot it if it's just a small amount every day. But over time, it can sort of flag and the system can tell you, oh, you might need to check this. Similarly, for how somebody's mood is or how they're feeling, it can spot patterns which are easy to overlook even when we're there all of the time because you get used to something. So I think that can be really, really beneficial in terms of just having a tool to support the way that we're caring and supporting for people. So I'm not saying that the data is better or the technology is better than an individual carer. I'm saying it's sort of a reminder or a prompt that we can use as a tool in the way that we're providing care. So I think that is really important. And then more broadly, as a business or an organization, it's easier to keep track of trends, sort of like the number of staff hours, if that's increasing. If you're using technology to monitor anything around your operational running, for example, it can really help with making sure you've got maintenance coming in at the right time. It can make sure that you're not suddenly spending lots more on electricity or on water and responding to that much more quickly, which can obviously be helpful. And if you're running multiple services as well, those sort of benefits really scale because you can't get to multiple locations every day, but you can have that in front of you on a dashboard at the touch of a button.
In my current role, and you touched there on a dashboard, is actually being able to utilize the data you've got to inform decision making. So a lot of my time is spent, with stakeholders, with commissioners, and actually you're able to utilize that data to give them factual insights. But quite often you'll be able to give them information that actually they don't even know that they need, but that's coming out of your systems. And I think some of us have such data-rich services. It's how we utilize that data, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really, really important. And firstly, if you're using the data, then, that covers you as well from a data protection point of view, because you have to have a purpose for all of the data you're collecting. And also there's no point collecting information you're not going to use. But as you said, that richness of data can help other organizations and can help you. So you can turn around to your commissioners and go, no, this is exactly what I'm doing in terms of caring for this individual. This is exactly what happens at what time every day. And also this is how much it costs to do that. And so if you're having contract negotiation conversations, you have all of that data at your fingertips to sort of turn around to a commissioner, which can be really helpful for those conversations.
Absolutely. We all know the battle there is to try and get more funding for people. In terms of, we've spoken there around a number of different systems, and we spoke about care planning systems. In your opinion, is it better for smaller domiciliary care services to have a system that does everything, so HR, payroll, rostering, the care planning, or would you advise having standalone systems?
To be blunt, I think it depends on your finances. Some of these systems can be quite expensive. They're all-in-one ones. So it may be more financially viable for you to say, this is the one which is most important now. And then either choose a system which has different modules. So maybe like you can buy a rostering module now, but they also do a care planning one, which you can look at in a couple of years or in a year when finances are there. Or you should look at a standalone solution, but which can integrate with other solutions in the future, and make sure that you know that that's something that that company does and has done in the past or is currently doing, rather than taking someone's word for it necessarily. I don't think there is a right way to adopt technology, but I think there's sort of ways you can approach it which gives you more options in the future, so you don't find yourself sort of suddenly stuck in a dead-end corridor going like, oh no, I already bought this thing and I've spent a lot of money, but I can't extend it to anything else to my service, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you touched there on integration. Are you able just to break that down? Because I think a lot of definitely people new into the sector, the new domiciliary care services, quite often fall foul of not having that integration. Are you able just to break that down into simple terms for anybody that's not tech-minded?
Yeah, of course. So what I mean by integration is just whether two systems can talk to each other, basically. So especially you want them to basically work together almost as if it's one computer program. You don't want to have to log into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different apps which don't speak to each other. You're constantly having to copy and paste from one to the other. That's not ideal. So in terms of integration between the systems you use, that's all I mean. I want the programs to be able to work together to make your life easier as a registered manager.
Thank you very much. Do you have any examples of where systems have helped domiciliary care services better manage their business?
One of the ways, which I don't think I've mentioned already about how it can help, is some of them allow route mapping to be calculated through it. So it will basically help you to map out where your clients are, as opposed to where each of your care staff live, and then give you more effective routes for carers to go around. So they're spending less time in the car between visits, which obviously they like, but also means they can potentially fit in more visits during the day. So it can make it more effective for you to manage the clients that you are seeing. And also, if you're paying for fuel for people's cars, it's minimizing how much driving they're doing. So as a business, you're not having to pay somebody to drive all the way across town to see one client and then come back to the other side of town to see somebody else. So there is some savings that you can see there, which also happen to make staff happier, your clients happier, and be better for the environment as well, because people aren't sat in a car. So I think that's something as a business that can be incredibly helpful.
In terms of somebody at the start of their digital journey, I'm very conscious that it becomes an absolute minefield of which system to use or where to start. And we've touched there on actually some of the bits and pieces you should start. What are some things that care providers should either avoid but also pay attention to when choosing which system's right for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think you need to really identify what you are wanting to achieve with the technology that you're selecting. Be really clear in your own mind. Okay, what do I know that I really need help with now, that I'm really going to find most important at this part of my journey? And the reason I say that is once you start looking for tech, no matter what kind of software it is, you're going to sit through a lot of sales pitches from a lot of people who've got like great marketing packs and do great things. But it can be easy to get swept up in that if you don't have a clear idea of at least like your top 3 most important things to you and what you think that you really need. So that can help having that really clear in your mind, I think, before you start. I'd also say don't make the decision alone. Have at least one other person in your team who you also get to test the software, to try it out, to sort of bounce that idea off with. If you are starting out on your own, I know micro businesses are becoming more and more common in the sector. There will be other businesses in your local area, care organisations who have gone through this journey as well. I would reach out to a couple, maybe ask their opinion on the software they're using. And as sort of a final thing, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, if you've narrowed it down to say maybe 2 different companies for software or 2 or 3, and you're pretty much like, okay, one of these is going to be the right one. Most of those companies will let you speak to one of their existing customers. If you say, oh, could I just talk to somebody else, who uses your product and just ask some questions, most of them will facilitate that for you. I mean, they want you to be happy as well with the product that they're selling. So asking advice, I think, is really, really important. I also think it's important in terms of technology when you're just starting out to think about what you can get done in advance, maybe sort of while you're waiting for your CQC registration to come through. Some of the things you might want to think about here are data security and protection toolkit, making sure you've got secure email set up if that's something you're going to need for the contracts you have with your clients. Anything to do with getting your policies and your procedures in place if you're going to use a quality assurance software system for that. You can get a lot of that done in advance, make sure your paperwork is all up to date and ready, and then you kind of go, okay, cool, that's good to go. And then think about things which you might decide you need to have from day one. So are you going to start immediately with a digital care planning system because it means that all of your staff are immediately trained up on it? You're just from day one doing that. Or do you go, actually, let's just get a couple of clients under our belt, start going, and then maybe in a year's time, we'll do that transition. It's going to be how comfortable you feel, I think, with that. But I think sometimes it's easier to start already doing it rather than having to retroactively change your processes and change your way of working later on.
I know that AI, and also with some of the technologies that are out there are care providers that are hesitant and they're anxious about rolling that out. What would be your final tips to anybody that is maybe worried about actually the impact or the time or the cost? Any tips for them?
I think what I would say is there's lots and lots of support out there. If you're having concerns and you're worried, you are not alone. Lots of people have concerns and are worried. We have lots of resources at the Digital Care Hub, but there's also resources like this. There are free support groups and networks all over the place, which you can join to really hear from other people, and also in a variety of formats. We've got written guidance, there's videos, you've got like the Caring View, for example. You talk about it quite a lot in that, Mark. And there's also funding available and support in that way. There's funding for nearly lots of different kinds of care technology around direct care right now, and we expect that to be carrying on into the future. And also at a local level, local commissioners are really focusing on this and piloting around this. So generally can provide that sort of one-to-one support if there's a specific project that you're interested in and want to be involved in. So that's sort of my main message is you're not alone. There's lots of help out there, and please do reach out.
Absolutely. And I reiterate that there is so much support out there. You just have to reach out and ask. Katie, thank you very much for giving up your time and coming to talk about digital systems and technologies in social care.
Thank you.